Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our India-centered webinar series. In today's webinar entitled Understanding Federalism in India from a Gender Perspective, we will discuss the dynamics of federalism and gender equality in the context of the federal system of India. We are very privileged to have with us Rekha Saxena, Professor of Political Science at the University of Delhi and Honorary Vice Chairperson of the Center for Multilevel Federalism in New Delhi. Rekha was a recipient of a number of prestigious research grants, participated in international research initiatives, represented India in a number of international conferences and programs, published over a dozen of books, and has written articles that have appeared in prestigious professional journals and books, both in India and abroad. Rekha specializes in the study of Indian and comparative politics with focus on federal political institutions, center-state relations, federalism, elections, and the party system. Rekha has been a long-time collaborator of the Forum of Federations and is also a senior advisor to the Forum. Welcome, Rekha. It is a pleasure to have you with us. So we will start just broadly speaking about gender equality. We know that gender equality is perhaps the most persistent and widespread expression of inequality around the world. Some important progress has been made in recent decades as a result of concerted efforts by women's rights organizations, national governments, and international community. However, many challenges still remain, and some of them are related particularly to violence against women and girls, and the deficit of women in the positions of political leadership. Moreover, the COVID pandemic has had a negative impact on progress in advancing gender equality, potentially even reversing some of the advances. Gender equality has many causes, and we can say that governance, especially the institutions that are designed, the processes, the structures, has the potential to play a key role in advancing, but potentially also inhibiting gender equality. From political participation to lawmaking, policy development, and service delivery, governance systems are integral to the daily lives of women and girls. The Forum of Federations has conducted a research on the dynamics between gender equality and federal and decentralized governance. And the main finding of our research is that federal and decentralized systems provide both advantages and disadvantages in the form of opportunities and challenges to advancing gender equality. So if federal systems can provide advantages for gender equality, what kind of advantages are we talking about? One of the advantages that was identified in our research that the federal systems provide is that governance is closer to the local communities. This is because federal systems have multiple levels of government, and the subnational governments, the regional governments, the local governments are close to the community that they serve. And so they are better able to understand the needs of local populations and local women and develop appropriate services that reflect women's needs. Local governments are often in charge of delivery of services that are very important for women's lives and for their well-being. And these are services such as elementary education, basic healthcare, and similar. So, Rekha, we would like to ask you to reflect on what are the experiences of India in this regard. Does a federal structure facilitate the provision of appropriate services to women that meet their needs? Are there any examples that you can speak about in the context of the Indian system?
Thank you, Dinah. I think I'm audible. Yeah, yes. Okay. So first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And to begin with, I would like to thank Forum of Federations, Rupak Chattopadhyay, Dinah, John, Liam, for this kind invitation and this introduction. As Diana mentioned, my association with the forum goes back to 90s. I still remember that the first international conference I attended was with you, Diana, in Brasilia. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that you're hosting this, event. So thank you so much. Now, coming to your question, I think, Diana, you rightly said that federal system has both advantages and disadvantages for gender equality. And I think multi-level structure in India has helped in promoting service delivery, because it is for the local government to reach out to people. Also, I think the local government can have, partnership with community for better service delivery. For example, you asked any good instance, so I can talk about centrally sponsored schemes in India, like the Integrated Child Development Scheme, ICDS, which in my view is a good exemplar to combat malnutrition for children under the age of 6 years, especially of weaker section. And this ICDS program is aimed, to reduce gender inequality by giving girls the same resources as boys. And they are implemented by panchayats, at the local level in association with local community. Now, the structure of this ICDS is multi-level. Like at one level, you have one at central level, then another at state or union territory level. Then you have district level, block level, and then village level. As far as the implementation of this ICDS is concerned, this is done mainly through interlinkages between vertical federalism and horizontal federalism. Vertically, the chain involves different, departments, like Department of Women and Child Development at central level. Then you have state government departments, district development officer, block level, child development project officer called CPDO. And at village level, you have Anganwadi centers. Okay. Besides, there are many international agencies that are also involved in funding of ICDS programs. And horizontally, it involves NGOs, both national, international, and community involvement. And I did a project on continuity and change in Indian federalism. This was funded by Leverhulme Trust in UK. It was an institutional collaboration between 6 universities, 3 from UK and 3 from India. So this was one of the themes. And we did, myself and my team from Delhi University, research scholars and college colleagues, we went to Gujarat and, we paid visit to Anganwadi centers in Gujarat and Punjab, and some scholars went to Odisha. So according to our findings in Gujarat, the designing and building of Anganwadis and preschools in the slum areas, especially in Ahmedabad, that is done by the Anganwadi project, TAP. Okay, and Australian, design professionals, they are recruited, trained by TAP, and in turn, they volunteer their time to live in India for 4 to 6 months in order to supervise the design and construction of these schools. And there's Indian NGO there, Manav Sadan, okay, and TAP. They create, cost-effective, beautiful, simple, safe spaces in which children can learn. And this they do in close collaboration, partnership with local community. And the local laborers, they usually largely use recycled material, construct Anganwadi centers. And this in turn, support Manav Sadan's philosophy of reuse, recycle, and reduce. And so far, Bholu, they have named it 1 to 12, unit 1, 2, 3, 4. So far, Bholu 1 to 12 have been completed there. So that was our experience, and we have written a paper also, which will be published soon in a journal. Similarly, when we went to Punjab, Panchkula, and Chandigarh, we in our fieldworks revealed that panchayats played a very crucial role in running of the scheme of Anganwadi centers. And these panchayats provided chairs to children, and panchayats, they keep supporting whenever there was any need. They were checking whether the Anganwadi centers are opening or not, quality food is being served or not. So these are some of the experiences we had. But of course, there are some negative, some challenges also that we can discuss maybe during question answer session. But despite odds, I think ICDS is world's most unique, early childhood development program, continued for almost 3 decades now. I think to reduce malnutrition, and it has helped in reducing malnutrition to a great extent. So I would say this is a very good example in which I have also done field work. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Reka. Yeah, that's certainly a very, very interesting example, and also it shows the cooperation of different actors, the national, local, at the national, local level, but also international community, right? Where you can perhaps, have synergies and have better achievements. Perfect. So we will move to the next area, which we would like to discuss and focus on. And this is an area that was identified in our research as important for gender equality, and that's women political representation and participation. So our research suggests that federal systems provide advantages in this regard because, in contrast to unitary systems, there are multiple access points for women to enter politics because there are seats available at the national, subnational, and also local government level, right? So, so women can compete for these positions. There are more options. Now, importantly, however, our research also found that these increased opportunities do not translate just by themselves easily to a bigger number of women in that finally end up in the office, and that additional measures are needed to support women's representation. And one such very important instrument is gender quotas. And gender quotas have been used in many countries, many federal countries, and India is one of example, and I'm sure you will have some insights on that. But what I wanted also to add is that gender equality in politics, it's not only about the numerical representation of women in public office. So it's also about their meaningful participation in the decision-making processes. And we know that female politicians are frequently treated differently to their male counterparts, and their influence on policy decision-making has been, hindered by many factors. And so the research identified that additional measures are necessary to ensure that women are actually able to meaningfully participate in these decision-making processes. And some of these measures that were identified were, for example, gender-sensitive parliaments, the preventing use of gender role stereotypes, or positive media coverage. So I would like to ask you to reflect on the question of representation and participation of women in politics in the Indian federal system. Does the federal structure support their participation and their representation? And do women meaningfully participate at local, subnational, and national level of government?
Yeah, interesting. Very true. I would say the federal structure, provide better opportunities for women to participate in politics. As I think it's easier for women to reach the local level and the state level than the national level politics. If you see the Indian case, the representation of women in the lower house, that is the Lok Sabha, that represents the people, that has only marginally moved up from 4.4% to that means 22 MPs in the first parliament, if you see 1952 to 1957, to 10% or 58 MPs for the first time in in the first parliament, first time in 15th Lok Sabha, that is 2009 to 2014, with 58 MPs, women MPs elected out of 543 total elected MPs. And then 16th Lok Sabha saw in 2014 the highest number of women which were elected in the history of the country at 62. That is 11.42%. And the present Lok Sabha, that has the highest number, of members of parliament. And that is 62 or 78 women in West Bengal. That's the highest, and Uttar Pradesh. So 62, that's the highest, number. And I think it has gradually been increasing over the years. And if we analyze the women representation in state legislatures, it is very far from satisfactory. Women, they are very dismally represented in all states, including states in Northeast, where women had less than 10% representation in state legislatures during 1989 and 2002. And in the period, in 1989 to 1992, Mizoram and Nagaland, they did not have even a single woman member in their state legislature. And in the period of 1998 to 2002, Delhi Legislative Assembly had the highest percentage of women, 12.8% in state legislature. So if we analyze representation of women in state legislatures from 2003 to 2020, we'll find that 3 northeastern states, namely Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, and Nagaland, how many? 4. They did not have any women member in the state legislative assembly in 2003 to 2007. And in the period of 2003 to 2020, Mizoram and Nagaland, they had worst condition of women representation in the state assembly. Even in states with high literacy and education levels like Kerala, Puducherry, and Delhi, women representation in their respective state assemblies was also very low. However, I would say the situation is far better at local level with 33% reservation that was given to women, which was introduced through this 73rd and 74th Amendment Act in 1993. So, and Bihar was the first state, to give 50% representation to women in panchayats. And but maybe this has been possible at that level precisely because I think local bodies in India have been historically powerless and resourceless. But there are issues like presence of sarpanch or panchayat patis, where it's very common that husbands, men folk or the husbands illegally substitute wives in official matters. So much so that I read somewhere in Indian Express that one man took oath in place of wife in this Hanakheti village under this Sujalpur Jadpat Panchayat of Shajapur district in 2015. So, but they defend, that these societies are feudal, normal feudalism is there, and it's very difficult to come out of the shadow of husbands. So, but over the years, many awareness camps have been, they have taken place, and NGOs have played a very important role to educate women. So, situation has changed over the years, and I remember, somewhere in some seminar, one of the participant panelists was mentioning that he went for a journalist, that he went to meet a women sarpanch, and her husband was sitting, on a place. And the moment she came, she said, no, just vacate my place now. So things are changing over the years. And then there are other issues relating to reservation of women in the national parliament and state legislatures, which is still hanging fire. So that we can take up during discussion. I don't want to focus on that, but maybe we can take up that issue during our discussion, question answer session. But another interesting point that I would like to note is that states like Kerala, Karnataka, they have low levels of women nomination and election, despite better profile in terms of women literacy and health. But on the other hand, you will find that states such as Rajasthan, Haryana, they have very high levels of nomination and election, though they are lagging behind in women's literacy and health, accompanied by unfavorable sex ratio. So this shows that patriarchy operates at different levels, and lack of discrimination at one level may coexist with discrimination at another level. And you rightly pointed out, Diana, that numbers alone is not important. Hannah Pitkin, argues that numerical representation is not enough. We should aim at substantial representation, in terms of carrying forward the agenda, the interest of the women in these parliament or state legislatures, like how far they have been able to actively perform, in terms of initiation of any private member bill, or in terms of debate, how actively they have asked questions in these parliament or state legislatures, or even women MPs we have, so, and or debated any issue, or and there's hardly any research on this, on substantial representation. Numerical representation, there has been scholars who have been working on this, but there is need, even in India, Carol Sperry has worked on this representation, but there's need to further do research on how far there has been. Is there only numerical representation, or there is some kind of substantial representation also? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Reka. Yeah, that's right. But also one of the points that our research identified, there isn't that much information available, and there is potential, for researchers to look into this area, and especially at the subnational level. I wanted to, as you hinted on it, Reka, we will have a discussion later on. So I would like to ask our audience to please, if you have any questions for Reka, you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. And after we complete this part of a discussion, then will be opportunity to ask questions. So thank you for that. And we will excuse me. We will now proceed with another question that we have ready for Reka, and this is related to policy, innovation, and experimentation. That is that our research found was kind of available, was possible in federal systems, and basically the federal system encourage experimentation, and this is happening especially at the subnational level. It was subnational level governments, whether they are states or provinces or similar. And this is because these subnational governments have autonomy and more flexibility to experiment with new and innovative policies that potentially can be very good for promoting gender equality. And if there are many instances of these kind of initiatives adopted in subnational units that were later transferred or adopted in other subnational units, or even at the central government level. And one such example that we came across in the area of violence against women are the female-only run police stations, which proved effective and were transferred to our subnational units when it was showed that they actually encourage women to approach the police station and report the violence to police. So I wanted to ask you, Reka, whether there are any experiences in India of this kind of innovation, experimentation at the subnational level, and the policy transfer to our national units.
Okay, I think many proponents of federalism value its scope for policy innovation and experimentation. And policies can be, as you mentioned, initially tested at the provincial level where risks are smaller than applied to national level. But I think even states can learn from each other and adopt similar policies, not just center and states. So, so, for example, at horizontal level, I would say a very good example is Nari Adalat, the women collectives, which have been formed, which is a kind of policy innovation which was developed in Gujarat and as a response to rise in violence against women. And this was replicated in other states like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and Uttar Pradesh. So I can think of this example. And then during COVID, I think alongside the measures which were taken by the center, states also adopted many innovative ways, like lockdowns were first initiated by the states. And even on economic front, Kerala was the first state to announce economic package, and a week later, center also announced financial support. So though there's no gender dimension to this, but federalism, it shows that federalism has potential where center can also learn from states and replicate. And there's a scholar, Bolzendal, he demonstrates on another very interesting dimension that there's need for gendering fiscal federalism by pointing out the distinct, gender effects of cash transfers and provisions of services. While cash transfers, they are, used more by men as opposed to social services, which are used by women for care work. And in India, in the study of this 13 Finance Commission report, which was done from the perspective of feminization of local governance, coupled with a gendered, fiscal devolution to the third tier. There's a scholar, Lekha Chakravarti, argues that it can lead to, public expenditure decisions that are responsive to the expressed preferences of women representatives in local bodies. Now, this policy space is opening up at the local level for conducting, gender responsive budgeting, which was first introduced in 1975. Then it was discontinued for some time. Then again, it was revived. But if you see the 2005 and 2006 union budget, there was a gender budget statement, GRB, which was introduced. And that, gave 4.8%, assigned 4.8% of the total budget outlay for this gender, specifically for gender budgeting, as part of gender budgeting. But post-pandemic situation, I think, continues to be disproportionately disadvantageous for women. And the gender budget, as a proportion has fallen to 4.4% in 2021-22 budget. So this is I would like to say.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, no, certainly the COVID pandemic has already has and will have impact, most probably negative impact on gender equality, and especially the in-depthness of a country, and like the availability of tax revenues is likely to impact very negatively women and in the future. So that's very important aspect that you mentioned. We have a lot to cover, so I will look at one more issue here a bit before opening to questions. And so far we discussed mostly the advantages that the federal systems or the centralized system provides for supporting and advancing gender equality. But our report identified also a number of disadvantages, and so it's important to recognize these. And so one of them is the fact that the centralized nature of federal system can result in the fragmentation of women's movement, and it will inhibit the capacity of the movement to organize and to advocate for reforms. It can also limit the capacity of a central government to implement policy initiatives that benefit women if the policy areas that are important to women are responsibility of the subnational governments, right? So they are the ones that actually regulate these areas. And so we already discussed some of the some of the benefits, at the area of service delivery. But if you look at the areas that are, in responsibility of subnational governments, and then we can see perhaps that women will be more or less likely to benefit from the different initiatives depending on the priorities of the subnational units. So, can you comment on some of the disadvantages that you see in the federal system?
Yeah. Yeah, I think sure. As we said, federal system has a lot of advantages, but alongside it also has many disadvantages as far as gender question is also concerned. And some I think there are many laws, which are both gender progressive and some are gender regressive. Okay, so due to the existence, like in case of India, due to the existence of this asymmetrical provisions of power sharing in the Indian Constitution, especially like with regard to states of Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370. Before the abrogation of Article 370 that gives special status, to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the laws of the parliament, they did not automatically apply to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and the state legislature had the power to make laws with respect to any matter other than defense, foreign affairs, finance, and communication. And the property laws of Jammu and Kashmir forbidden, outsiders to buy property in Jammu and Kashmir. And, many scholars like Raja argues that the laws were silent on the subject of citizenship of women who, marry outsiders. So which was discriminatory, which was a regressive law. And under this Article 35A, which is also abolished by the present government, and abolition of Article 370 and 35A. Which was 35A, which was a regressive kind of law with regard discriminatory to women, that woman from Jammu and Kashmir who marries a non-state subject is rather, I would say, punished and loses many state subject rights, like her husband and children. They cannot inherit property, they don't get entry into government colleges or government jobs, access to government jobs, cannot vote, etc. So these are some disadvantages of this. So, but this has been abolished along with Article 370. Then I would say that most of the, as you mentioned about the various list, about distribution of powers, I think most of the issues with important implications for women's politics, they are provided in concurrent list in India. Okay, such as social security, education, welfare of labor, maternity benefits, economic and social planning, marriage and divorce, and issues mainly pertaining to family, population control and family planning. So this means that there can be different laws on these operating in different states unless they conflict with central laws. And in India, if it conflicts with central law, then the central law prevails if in case of concurrent list. So most feminists around the world, they believe that important areas such as social welfare and family, they should be in the hands of central government to ensure some kind of, uniform social and economic rights. Like Mariam Shah, while addressing implications of distribution of powers in case of Canada, has pointed out that centralization of human rights protections, such as in Canadian Federation, can facilitate equal citizenship both for women and sexual minorities. And subjects relating to personal laws such as marriage, divorce, guardianship, inheritance, apart from this concurrent list. Therefore, different states can have different laws on these subjects. So these laws prove to be, regressive, and therefore there's view that if they are placed in union list, then there can be some kind of uniformity. Now, one good example of gender progressive law I can think is the existence, in case of India, is existence of common civil code in Goa. Okay, when it became part of the Indian territory in 1961. Family laws, they were based on the Portuguese civil code of 1867. And these laws were common for all religious, communities. So the Parliament of India, enacted Goa, Daman and Diu Administration Act, which held that Portuguese civil laws will prevail until repealed by an act of parliament. So from gender justice point of view, I think it becomes pertinent to note that registration of marriages is compulsory in Goa, and women have equal share in marital property. So this, I would say, is a good example of gender progressive law as far as the subnational governments in India are concerned, to my knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rika. Thank you very much. So I think we covered the main questions, and since we want to give opportunity to our audience to ask questions, so we have some lined up, and so let me ask you, Rika. We have a question here. So, question for Professor Rika Saxena. In a recent paper titled "Gendering Federalism," you highlighted how asymmetrical federalism interacted with women's politics in various states in India. Okay. That's not really a question, but perhaps you can comment on that.
Your voice is cracking. Who is the, can you read the name? I can't see where are the questions. I don't know whether I can see the questions or you have to read out.
Oh no, you can. I don't think you can see the questions. It's probably only me who can see them.
Can you read out the name? Oh no, it's I didn't. Your voice was cracking, so I couldn't hear something on political federalism.
I repeat. So in a recent paper titled "Gendering Federalism," you highlighted how asymmetrical federalism interacted with women's politics in various units in India.
Yeah, so I think it's, I did mention about how asymmetrical federal provisions have had impact on gender in India. And I gave the example of Jammu and Kashmir, which has been, especially Article 35A, which was a very, in my opinion, a kind of regressive law, which is abolished, where women who married an outsider loses her rights of inheritance and all. So that has been repealed. So I think that is, but then I also gave, it has been a mixed experience. So I also talked about this Nagaland and Mizoram under Article 371 A and G, where they have, which is another asymmetrical provision of the Indian Constitution, where they have rights to protect their own customary laws. And again, the Union Parliament cannot automatically, apply their, it has to be passed by their state legislatures, especially if it relates to their customary laws. And another example I mentioned about Goa, which is an example of progressive law, where women have marriages have to be registered and they have equal share in marital property. So it has been a mixed record as far as asymmetrical provision of power sharing is concerned. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, Professor Saxena, do you think giving 33% reservation for women at state and central level will form a ceiling, thereby blocking further increase in women's representation?
That's it?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting question about this women representation. And as I mentioned, this reservation regarding women, that has been hanging fire for quite some time now. And there has been demand for representation of women in reservation in parliament and state legislative assembly for long. And I think the government, I would say they are, it's not a serious matter for the political parties also, women representation. They're also, because all other bills are passed except for women representation, which is hanging fire. But then an amendment bill with this objective was there for public debate, including in the parliament, and that supported women's movement. But segments of the movement were also worried about quotas could form a ceiling, then a minimum to be improved upon. Okay, so if you and that women candidates might be pliable because of their dependence on male party leaders, and that reservation will treat women like a homogeneous group, which increases the likelihood that the BB brigade of the educated upper class caste women will be elected, particularly because the bill does not provide the for sub quota for OBCs. So most of the subaltern caste parties, they were opposing this, and there was demand for quota within quota. Within these women, they wanted sub quota for other backward castes. So so I think the ceiling will, of course, I agree that quotas could forming a ceiling rather than a minimum to be improved upon. But women will not be elected if 33% is their ceiling is there. Then they will not be elected for rest 67%. So, but till date, we have only after independence till date, we have in more than 7 decades, we have after independence, we have reached only 13% reservation. Representation of women is almost 13%. So we should at least try to give it 33%. Then talk about the rest. I don't know how many years, decades it will take to reach 33%. So many countries, they are demanding 50% representation for women, especially African countries like Rwanda and South Africa also. There's another way. If this women representation reservation is not able to pass in the parliament, another way is that parties, they political parties, they have started fielding candidates and giving 33% representation, like in South Africa. So in India also, I think, until there's amendment, at least political parties can do giving reservings tickets for women. They can give at least reserve 33% seats for women, give field tickets, give tickets to women. So.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. There are examples from other countries where the quotas, when they were implemented, it took very long time to actually to achieve, what percentage that was set, right, for seats to reserve for women. And also it led to a question. There are instances where the percentual quota was actually overcome, so it was a good it was a good example already. You set the quota at a certain level, but then with time it's actually overcome considerably, in some countries, but it takes time, right? So it's not going to become to happen imminently. Okay, Reka, so we have another question here for you from Harihar Bhattacharya, which is, on what basis can one consider the ICDS?
Diana, your voice is cracking. Your voice is cracking. I can't hear. Could you please repeat?
Yeah, my connection is not good. Yeah, I can see it here. Can you hear me now? Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
It's better.
Better? Okay. So I repeat the question. It's on what basis can one consider the ICDS scheme as gender-based? You are muted now, Reka.
Yeah, so you're saying on what basis the ICDS scheme is gender-based?
Whether it can be considered gender-based.
Yeah, or gender-based. Okay.
Gender-based, yeah.
Yeah, because this ICDS scheme, as I mentioned, it's especially for, to reduce gender inequality. And that gives especially girl child the same resources as the boys. So I think in that sense, we are talking about this. It is gender-based. That women, the girl child below the age of 6 years, they get, equal resources, access like the boys, and they provide nutritional meals or preschool education, healthcare services to girl child and their mothers under the age of 6 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Subhendu Raj. I'm interested in knowing if any research has been done on the issue, namely women in legislatures lessen the role of criminality in politics and perhaps increases articulation of genuine issues.
Interesting. I think I have not come across any such work on this criminality. Politics, criminalization of politics. Of course, there are some works and some studies done by ADR. This is an organization that works on democratic rights and Association for Democratic Rights. So they work on this and they have some data on this and criminalization of politics. But among women, I don't know. I have not come across any such study. So maybe for future research, it can be interesting topic, and I can also look into it. Yeah, but I have not come across. I've seen the ADR reports because I wrote something recently for Election Commission. They have come up with a new journal. So I wrote a co-authored paper on representation of women, and I went through the reports of ADR, but I didn't come across any such. Maybe some instances of criminal elements background, like Phulan Devi and some other criminal elements, but no such data I haven't seen. So, but it is interesting to have studies in future.
I'm not sure whether I understand well this question, but like what our research shows is that more women in parliaments actually decreases corruption. So there is a positive correlation between, you know, the level of corruption if you have more women in politics. But I'm not sure whether it's exactly what the question is meant to ask.
But I think there's no such assurance like if there are more women in politics, there'll be less corruption. So it's like hypothetical. I think there are no such studies to prove this. So it's difficult to answer straight yes or no. So
yeah,
I have to support. There's no studies that support this argument. So
perfect.
But I would say more educated, if education is there, then it's fine. But more women, in terms of corruption, I don't think any such correlation with regard to gender as far as corruption is concerned.
Okay.
In my view. So, but whoever asked this question is welcome to have a different point of view. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll probably proceed with the last question because we are running out of time, and this is for Eureka's. The forum research indicates that men have an important role to play in federal systems in supporting initiatives aiming to advance gender equality. What is your view on the role of men in advancing gender equality in the Indian federal context? You're muted.
I think the role of male politicians in all the political parties of present today, does not seem encouraging, in my view, for the cause of gender equality. So thus, it can be said that they are not acting as gatekeepers to gender equality in the present context. However, I would say that in the past, there have been male social reformers during the 19th century, Raja Mohan Roy, and then early 20th century Periyar, who could be regarded as champions of social equality. And there's this scholar Carol Sperry. She pointed out that coalition politics has also caused problem in increasing legal quotas for women in the national parliament due to presence of many smaller national parties. National state-based parties in coalition which adopt anti-quota stance and prevent passage of national legislation. So I think present day, I think, but not only men, but I think as far as gender equality is concerned, it has to be a concerted responsibility of all, like not only men, but the entire mindset, patriarchy, the institution of family, education, government, state, civil society, all have to play an important role. It has to be a collective effort, to change this mindset, patriarchal mindset. So that's what I think.
Yeah, thank you. No, definitely. We've seen from the report from our research that men have to be a part of this, of this endeavor, of all these endeavors in fighting, discrimination, and we want to achieve a more gender equal world, right? Okay, I think we are close to a conclusion of our webinar. So there are still many issues that we could have been discussing, but we don't have time for this now. But anyway, I would like to thank Rekha. Thank you very much for your time, for all your insights. It's been very interesting, and your views, from the Indian federal system, greatly contribute to our bigger picture, our work on gender equality and federalism that we do in the form of federations. And I would obviously also like to thank all my colleagues, especially John, Vikas, Liam, Diana, Sumaya, for their support in preparing this webinar and in running it. And also thank you to our audience. We just hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we will look forward to welcoming you to our future events. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Diana, for more federations. I want to thank everyone, the entire team, for this kind of invitation, and I would like to thank all the audience also, and for their very important and relevant interventions. So thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you. Bye.